Guess what? You can't say that transitioning a child is the right thing to do without research anymore. This is novel.
Wow.
In the UK, they've had enough of that now, and the government has published official guidelines for gender questioning children in schools. And this is based on the leadership and months-long research from Parliamentary member Kemi Badenoch. She has said repeatedly, you can't just tell me best practices are to transition a child, change their name, change their pronouns without any research behind it. I'm done with that. We are no longer going to just let people say this is what you do and that's what everyone's going to do because we're bullied by trans rights lobbyists. No more. That makes her public enemy number one. And this is exactly what they were worried that she would do. Recall last year they called her transphobic for meeting with a detransitioner named Kira Bell in order to understand how children who take hormones can really be harmed, especially when they start young. This was from Pink News last year. They said, uh-oh, she's been hired. This is no good. We're in trouble. So according to these activists, you should not talk to people who have had horror stories of sex changes before they were 18, cross-sex hormones that are unproven to do anything, but also proven to be harmful. So we should ignore them, right? Well, she's having none of that. Here she was a few days ago discussing this, how she met with this person. Politicians didn't want her to meet with this person, which is so crazy to think about. Kira Bell is an English person, right, who says, I was harmed by this. And politician says, we can't look at you. The trans rights lobbyists will be upset if we even talk to you. So sorry you were hurt, go stay in a corner, or else it will cost me my political career. She did not care. And Kemi Badenoch met with her anyway. Listen to her story.
In May 2021, against official advice, I will stress that officials said you should not have this meeting. I met a young lady called Kira Bell. She was a lesbian. She was a lesbian who told me the horrific experience that she had in the Tavistock clinic. It was an eye-opening experience. I know that the member for Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath talked about transing away the gay in his speech in Westminster Hall debate. We are seeing, I would say, almost an epidemic of young gay children being told that they are trans and being put on a medical pathway for irreversible decisions, and they are regretting it. That is what I'm doing for young LGBT children. I am making sure that young people do not find themselves sterilized because they are being exploited by people who do not understand what these issues are. And I am saying this on the advice of clinicians. I'm saying this on the advice of academics. There are clinicians from the Tavistock who have been whistleblowing, talking about what these issues are. The honourable man tells me that he is traumatized. We are traumatized by what is happening to young children, and we are not going to run away from this issue any longer.
Good for her.
Yes, she is a beast when it comes to this because she takes it. You know, people call her all kinds of names. She does not care. She is going to stick to the evidence and do what's right. Now, she has repeatedly says that she will proceed with these guidelines based on actual research, and she will not be bullied by activists like Stonewall.
And one of the issues that we have is that a lot of people do not understand the law where it comes to self-identification. We are providing clarity there. We have engaged with numerous LGBT groups, but the fact of the matter is that many of them support self-ID. That is not this government's policy. Stonewall does not decide the law in this country. Whatever it is that people want to campaign on, we will listen and we will hear. But we have been very clear about this. And this is something that we are not budging on, and we are updating the law in accordance with government policy, and we will continue to do so.
All right. I have many times said about her, you go girl. She's a hero. And she did exactly what she said she was going to do. So here is the official guidance for schools for gender questioning children. This was released this week. You can see that it's still in a draft form, but you can see where the government is going with this. Here are the 5 guiding principles. These are things that I would say up until recently, you couldn't even say this without being called hateful or transphobic. But the guidance is that a school and college has duties to safeguard and promote the welfare to all children, be respectful, tolerant, not no bullying, right? But parents should not be excluded from decisions. So you can't just socially transition a child, change their name, change their pronouns, and leave the parents out of that. She says they have specific legal duties framed by a child's biological sex. Now, the government is saying biological sex is to determine what groups you can be a part of. And it is your duty to protect, for instance, girls for a single sex space, to say, deal with their menstruation, change their clothes, those types of things. Same thing for boys. And that there is no general duty to allow a child to socially transition. This is specific guidance, and it's careful not to push for medicalization of bodies, sex change surgeries, harmful hormones. In fact, it takes a wait and see approach with these guidelines. It calls this watchful waiting. Take a look at this, which is published in the guidelines, saying that they need to wait before considering a request to ensure it's sustained and properly thought through decision. It may ensure unnecessary action is not undertaken. That's because all academic research on gender dysphoria shows that in over 80% of cases, gender dysphoria is resolved through a normal course of puberty. So what that means is that when you put a child on puberty blockers, you are blocking the one thing, which is puberty, that normally resolves gender dysphoria, and you are prolonging gender dysphoria indefinitely and creating a lifelong pharmaceutical
Yeah, because it all works itself. I mean, mostly it works itself out. We've heard from so many testimonials of people who said, I grew up, I was kind of a tomboy.
Right.
And, now I'm a happily married woman with kids. And I was just kind of like a tomboy when I was a kid.
And a lot of times it works itself out as gayness. But a gay person has a right to an unmutilated body, don't you think?
Yeah.
And so
I'm glad.
Go ahead.
My mom got me dolls for Christmas one year, and I played with dolls. I'm glad that this wasn't around back then, because you might be talking to Davida or something.
Yeah.
David, right? David.
Right. You might have some boobs on.
I mean, that's the thing. Literally,
shirt.
it's that shallow. It is. It's like, oh, he's playing with dolls. Let's go get him some puberty blockers.
Right. It addresses the fact that gender stereotypes are not gender. So if you are someone who plays with dolls and you're a biological boy, that doesn't make you a girl. That just makes you a boy who likes dolls, which should be okay, right? If you're a girl who likes sports, that should be okay. That doesn't mean, in fact, if we can just look at this next screen, it even says that a lot of this is pressure on it would just be LGB people, right. Just lesbians and gays, right? Mostly that they hear from lesbians who felt pressure to identify as a transgendered male, or a transgender male who felt pressure to come out as a lesbian rather than transgender. It's just very confusing because you're slapping these labels on children for the purposes of adults, when watchful waiting would give them time to figure it out, to stop being so pressured by these pharmaceutically backed lobbyist groups. And it says that schools should make clear that they are under no pressure to reach a particular outcome, right? And a lot of times when a school gives you this label, like, okay, you must be trans. This is a very brave course you're taking. This is who you are now. And if you tell a young person that, they're like, okay, this is my cross to bear. I can handle it, right? I'm a brave person. It's going to get me attention. This is very self-replicating. As you can imagine, though, these new evidence-based guidelines that say that you need to prevent, pushing someone into an agenda, that you need to have watchful waiting and single-sex spaces, you can imagine that trans lobbyists do not like it. In fact, Stonewall, the charity that has been discredited because they push people into gender transition, they hate this. Here is their statement on this guidance, calling it not fit for purpose. They say it comes from a very narrow ideological perspective. It presents trans children as a contested belief. And it says that there's been no attempt to understand the needs or lived experience of trans children. Well, again, they cite research from lived experiences of many people. So that's just an outlie. They just basically said they didn't talk to any of us that we wanted you to talk to. And this lie is because there's no research on the efficacy of what they call best practices. They said they wanted them to sort of go along with this best practices, which means transitioning children, cutting off their genitals, building breasts or taking them off, hormones, what have you. And in fact, people who advocate for gender transition know that it would never, ever pass any academic or board review. I remind you of this. Go ahead, David, please.
Well, I was just going to say, have you seen on Twitter, like the pictures and just how barbaric all of this looks? Like it's, and the stories of how much pain they're in after those medical transitions. I can't even stomach reading some of it.
No, it's awful to look at. I mean, it is. It's like you're looking at mutilated individuals, like something that would come out of a torture chamber.
It's incredibly painful. Even if you don't go the surgical route, just the medicines alone, if you, what they call get your tea, some of this is injections. I've talked to my children about this and they're like, you're getting a shot all the time? No, I'm out. They're injections. Some of it's not, some of it's just pills, but you think about, it's basically polyjuice potion, like in Harry Potter, you are transitioning your body into what it's not, and it hurts a lot, and it creates a lot of medical problems that you didn't have before. Here is last year, Dr. Meredith McNamara. She's an advocate for transgender, gender-affirming healthcare. Gender-affirming, you know what I think of that term. She admitted last year that none of these best practices would ever pass any kind of academic review.
Moving on, the state claims that the absence of randomized controlled trials negates all evidence for the benefits of gender-affirming care. First, an RCT, or randomized controlled trial, for gender-affirming care would never pass an institutional review board safety or ethical standard.
Okay. Yeah, wouldn't.
There's no gray area there.
No, because one, it's hurting young bodies. Two, it's unethical to test this on them. Three, we know that this resolves itself through the normal course of puberty. And four, we know that none of this transitioning ever resolves gender dysphoria. It just persists, no matter what level you transition yourself to. And we know that these drugs are harmful and cause all manner of things, including hair loss, memory loss, bone loss, density. There are now teenagers with osteoporosis and, long-term risk of cancer. So, okay. So, you can't just make up standards as standards of care or best practices and then refer to the things you made up as data, right? You have to have research behind what you are going to do to children or advocate for children. And that's what the United Kingdom is now saying. I wish the United States would say this. No more for gender rights, gender advocates, trans advocates. No more just making this up as you go. You have to come with research now. So we'll see if they do, in fact, do that. Let us know what you think of this in the chat.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.